My phone rang at 2 a.m., the screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in 4 years. My daughter's name. The daughter I buried in the cold rain of February. The daughter whose voice I thought I would never hear again. I stared at the phone as it vibrated in my shaking hand. I answered, and her voice, that soft, gentle, impossible voice, whispered, "Dad, open the door, I'm freezing." My heart stopped, because I knew two things: she couldn't be alive. And yet something was standing outside my house calling me Dad. And when I opened that door, my world split in two. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Peter Malden. I'm 63 years old, and I've lived alone in Coldwater, Michigan ever since my daughter passed away. Grief changes a man. It makes the nights too long and the mornings too quiet. But nothing, not the loneliness, not the memories, not even the nightmares, prepared me for the night my daughter's voice came back from the silence. And what stood on my doorstep at 2 a.m. was not what I expected. The phone felt wrong in my hand, cold, alive, electric. I hadn't expected a call at 2 a.m., not after 4 years of quiet nights, not after I learned how to sleep without waking to her laugh. The screen showed her name, Emma Malden, 3 letters that used to mean everything. I didn't pick up immediately. Part of me waited for the call to stop, for the ringtone to die and the world to go back to the version I'd learned to live in. The vibration kept going, a stubborn, impossible insistence. My fingers found the green button. "Hello," I said, voice thinner than it should be. "Dad," she whispered, her voice, Emma's voice, soft and small, the voice that braided my mornings together like ribbon. "Open the door, I'm freezing." My mouth moved, but no words came out. I pressed my palm against my chest instead, like I could hold that sound in place. "Emma," I began. There was a pause, long enough for me to chart out all the ways the world might split. "Dad," she said again, nearer this time, "please." The line went dead. I stood there with the phone to my ear for a long time. The little speaker felt like it had warmed to her breath. My first thought was trick, some cruel prank, a scammer with a good voice. My second thought was worse, a recording, clever, pre-recorded, manufactured grief. My third thought was my hands. They remembered the small warmth of her fingers. They remembered the places where her life had been stitched into mine. I pulled on a robe with hands that didn't obey me. The hallway felt like a corridor in a hospital, endless, tiled, lit by memory. Outside, snow had begun to fall again, thin, persistent, just enough to sound like someone walking on the porch. I opened the front door a crack. Cold air slid inside. It smelled of wet cotton in winter. No footprints on the porch. No shadow leaning on the rail. I stepped out onto the welcome mat. The planks under my feet creaked in an old rhythm. Neighborhood lights made a soft halo. Mrs. Alvarez's house across the street was lit. A curtain twitched. I called out because fear needs witnesses. "Emma," I said into the dark. No answer, just the wind carrying something that might have been a laugh or the memory of one. I closed the door to lock it and felt ridiculous. Locked doors are for people who expect walls to hold back the world. Doors don't stop voices. I went back inside, shakier than before, and dialed the hospital. No one picked up. The night line hummed like an old radio. Then 2 soft knocks at my kitchen window, small, deliberate. I turned and saw Mrs. Alvarez, cupped in her coat, pale and worried. "Peter," she mouthed. Her eyes were large enough to be honest. "Everything, are you okay?" I opened the window a sliver. "Did you hear that?" I asked. "My daughter," she held up a hand. "No," she said, "but I heard your phone. I came over when I saw the light." "How do you explain to neighbors that the dead called you on your own phone? How do you tell someone the voice you miss is at your door?" Mrs. Alvarez didn't need the explanation. She put a palm on my arm like an anchor. "Call the sheriff," she said. Now, I did. Sheriff Dalton's voicemail picked up. His voice was a tired echo. He said he was on a run, that a deputy would check in as soon as possible. Deputies arrive in their own time. When the roads are soft and full of snow, their time is slow. I turned back to the porch. The night seemed thicker now, as if the dark had taken a breath. My living room windows framed the world in rectangles. I could see my own reflection, grown older in the glass. And pressed against that glass, high on the lower pane, was a small handprint. Not a child's handprint, too small and perfect. Not a lover's, too clean. It had the shape of a palm and the faint smudge of dirt. My heart did something I hadn't named. It dropped low and then rose like a tide. I opened the back door to check the garden. Tracks led from the edge of the yard up to the patio. Fresh prints, bare footprints pressed into the snow. Small but adult-sized, direct, unhesitating. Someone had been here. Snow had not yet filled in the grooves. Mrs. Alvarez stepped closer, breath puffing. She squinted at the prints, then back at the house. "Peter," she said, voice thin, "come in. Call Sheriff Dalton again." I dialed and left another message. I told myself I would lock the back door, go upstairs, and call the number Emma's voice came from. I would demand answers. But when I reached the hallway, I smelled something familiar. Not her perfume, too sweet and floral. Not the hospital smell either. I smelled the scarf she used to wear in winter, the one she wrapped around her neck like armor. It lay on my entry table, folded, damp, and at the corner, tucked under a small scrap of paper. My hand shook as I picked it up. On the scrap were 4 words, written in a careful, slanted hand I knew better than I knew my own. "Come downstairs, don't wake him. Don't wake him." I knew instinctively who the him might be. I had no business following a note that might be a forgery. I had no business leaving the safety of Light and Mrs. Alvarez and the idea that police were on their way. And yet I slid the back door open, the note tight between my fingers, and I went down the back steps. The basement door stood half open, a narrow rectangle of deeper darkness inside. A single bulb hung and swung slightly, throwing shadows like hands. My breath made small clouds. Mrs. Alvarez stood at the top of the steps, mouth open, face a carved worry. "Peter, don't," she began. I put a finger to my lips. For a moment, one long, terrible moment, I thought of calling out to her to go away, to tell her to leave me alone with whatever ghost had come home. Then I heard it. A soft shuffle from the bottom of the stairs, not the click of a boot, not the scrape of a cane, a whisper, 2 syllables. "Dad." I froze. The light above the stairs swung, and in that shifting oval of bulb light, something moved at the base of the last step. A small white shoe lay there, a child's shoe, Emma's when she had been little. It was damp with snow. Next to it, a shard of glass reflected the bulb. On the shard, in faint lipstick, a word I knew without needing to read: "Forgive." My hands went numb. I realized then that I was no longer alone on my porch, or in my kitchen, or in my life. Someone had come into my house. They had left a message. They had used my daughter's small things like talismans. Between the bulb and the doorway, something moved very slowly. Not a person at first. A shadow that rearranged itself like a figure. Then a voice, breath close enough to my name to be a touch: "Dad." The last thing I saw before the basement light swung back and the world swallowed up the shape was a face turned upward toward me, familiar and wrong, and a smile that belonged to a ghost. I had opened the door. I had seen it. Now I had to decide what to do next. I didn't go down the basement steps. Not yet. I stood there frozen, one foot on the first stair, the other anchored to the hallway floor like the house itself was holding me back. The basement felt wrong, too cold, too still, as if the darkness had been waiting for me specifically. Mrs. Alvarez stayed behind me, her hands pressed together like a prayer. "Peter," she whispered, "someone is doing this. Someone alive, someone sick." Alive, the word echoed, but the voice I heard, the voice saying "Dad." It didn't sound like a stranger imitating Emma. It sounded like Emma, the exact softness, the exact tremble, the exact way she used to whisper when she was afraid of thunderstorms. That was what terrified me most. I stepped back slowly, forced my legs to retreat. The basement door creaked, complaining like a tired old throat. "We're not going down there," Mrs. Alvarez said. "Not alone." She was right. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I reached for my phone and dialed the sheriff again. Voicemail. Again, voicemail. The world outside was silent except for wind pushing against the house. Something about the note, "Don't wake him," clawed at my ribs. Who was him? Who had been in my house without me knowing? I turned the basement key in the lock. My breath shook out of me when I heard it click. "Come," Mrs. Alvarez whispered. "We're going upstairs. We're calling for help." We made it to the living room, and that's when my phone buzzed again. A text message. Unknown number. My heart flipped. "Why didn't you come down?" I stared at the words. Mrs. Alvarez read over my shoulder. She gasped. "Peter, don't respond." But I already had. My fingers typed before my brain caught up. "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared immediately. Typing then, "You heard me." I felt the blood drain from my face. Mrs. Alvarez grabbed my arm. "We need to get out of the house," she whispered. "Now." but before we could move, the lights flickered. Once, twice. Then the house fell into complete darkness. I felt her hand clutch mine. Peter, I fumbled for my phone's flashlight. The weak beam lit the far corner of the room. That's where I saw it. A small object had been placed on the table. Suddenly, silently, without either of us seeing, I walked toward it slowly, each step heavier than the last. It was a stuffed rabbit. Emma's stuffed rabbit, the one she slept with until she was 10, the one I buried with her because she loved it so much. But here it was, dry, whole, sitting on my table as if it had never left. My fingers trembled as I touched its ear. The same familiar patchwork stitching. Peter, Mrs. Alvarez whispered, voice cracking. No one else knew she had this. Yes, that was true. No one, not unless I swallowed hard, unless someone had been digging where she was buried. A hatred rose in me, icy, breathless, unfamiliar. I reached out and picked up the rabbit. A single folded piece of paper fell from underneath it. I hesitated. Then I opened it, 4 words again, the same handwriting. Why won't you listen? A knock thundered against the front door and we both jumped. Mrs. Alvarez tensed. Peter, don't, but I couldn't stop myself. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. My lungs nearly collapsed in relief. It was Deputy Vaughn, young, nervous, but real. I yanked the door open. Thank God, I breathed. Someone in the house, someone pretending to be my daughter. Vaughn frowned. Sir, we got your messages. Sheriff Dalton is on his way. He stepped inside, wiping snow from his jacket. What exactly happened? Before I could speak, Mrs. Alvarez answered for me. He got a phone call from his dead daughter's number. Someone left footprints. Someone left items from her childhood. There's someone in the basement. Vaughn stiffened. Basement, he repeated, hand drifting to his holster. Yes, I said. I heard someone down there, and there was a note telling me not to wake him. Vaughn nodded, trying to appear calm, but I saw the flicker in his eyes. Fear. He pulled his flashlight. Stay here, he said. I'll check it out. Mrs. Alvarez clung to my arm as we watched him descend the stairs. The house fell quiet again, too quiet, then a scream. A short, strangled scream that cut off abruptly. Mrs. Alvarez gasped and covered her mouth. Peter, I didn't think. I ran. I reached the basement door and tore it open. Vaughn, I shouted. Are you okay? No answer. I pointed my phone's flashlight down the stairs, and my breath froze. Vaughn was lying on the floor, face down, still, but he wasn't unconscious. He was awake, wide awake. His eyes were open wide with terror, fixed on the far corner. He lifted one trembling hand, pointed, not at me, at someone standing behind the water heater, someone tall, too tall, a silhouette that stayed perfectly still except for the soft rising and falling of breath. Dad, the voice drifted from the dark. Emma's voice. But older, sadder, wrong. Mrs. Alvarez screamed behind me. The figure moved then, slow, deliberate, stepping forward into the dim light. And when the light finally touched her face, I felt the world collapse beneath me. It was Emma. It was a woman in her 20s, thin, pale, eyes too bright, wearing Emma's scarf, holding Emma's stuffed rabbit, using Emma's voice. She smiled at me through the dark. I told you I was freezing. My mind shattered itself trying to understand. Who was she? How did she know Emma's things? How did she know my voice? My home, my grief. She stepped closer and her smile widened. You said you'd never leave me, she whispered. You promised. My knees weakened. I don't know you, I whispered back. Her eyes darkened like storm water. I know, she said softly. And then from the deepest part of the basement, another voice spoke. A man's voice, familiar, broken. Pete, my heart stopped, because it was a voice I had buried years before. Emma's biological father. My estranged brother, the man we all believed was dead. The shape stepped forward out of the dark, not Emma, but a man I had thought dead for 20 years. My brother, Tom. I didn't know I still knew how to gasp like that. He looked older, harder, like someone who'd been carved by cold nights and running. Pete, he said, soft, hoarse. Don't faint, please. My knees went weak anyway. Tom, I croaked. Tom, you. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. You thought I was gone, he said. I remembered the funeral, my hands at the pulpit, the police report, the note that said he'd disappeared, the years of silence like a wall. How, why? I couldn't make the words line up. He took the stuffed rabbit from the woman's hands and put it gently on the water heater. You left town, he said. They thought I left for good. I planned it. I needed to vanish. Vanish, I repeated stupidly. He looked at the woman, the mimic, then back to me. She's not who you think, he said. Her name's Mara. She works with me, Mara smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only that too bright stare. You made her sound like Emma on the phone, I said, voice shaky. Tom nodded. We needed you to open the door. I felt suddenly sick. We needed to see your face, he said, to see if you would still fall apart. Fall apart, I whispered. What the hell is going on, Tom? He slid down the side of the water heater until he was sitting on the cold concrete. You remember the night Emma died? He asked. Nodded, images, fragmented rows, a call, a run, a collapsed figure, sirens muffled by snow. You remember the fix-it men who came to the apartment the week before? He asked. I blinked. Fix-it men, that didn't fit. Tom's jaw tightened. They were never repairmen. They were looking for something. They took a photo from under her mattress the last time she was out. My stomach turned. What photo? He pulled a small envelope from his coat pocket. Inside, a single printed picture. It showed a man. Not my brother, not me. A man standing in front of Emma's apartment door, late at night, head bowed, hands in pockets. Tom pushed the photo toward me. Recognize him? He asked. My hands shook as I took it. The face was someone I'd seen once at a grocery store years ago. A man who'd smiled at me in the cashier line. A polite neighbor type. Nothing to mark him. I shook my head. Tom's voice dropped. You didn't because he didn't want you to. He lived 2 blocks over. He knew the habits of half the street. He looked at Mara. She's been following him for months, Tom said. She mimicked messages. She made phone calls. She left things. She needed you to respond. Mara's voice was quiet. He's arrogant, she said. He thinks no one notices. He thinks he's invisible. Who is he? I demanded. Tom's fingers tightened on the edge of the envelope. You remember Mrs. Larkin's boy, the one everyone said was polite, Grant Larkin. The name landed like a stone. Grant Larkin worked at the bank, always smiling, always friendly at the neighborhood barbecue. You think I started. Tom nodded slowly. He'd been watching Emma, he said. Watching her, following small things, the packages she ordered, the nights she stayed in when she went out. He liked control. My memory lurched. I remembered a shadow across the hall the night Emma called me crying, a van idling at the curb. I remembered thinking it was random. You found evidence? I asked. Tom reached into his coat again. This time he produced a flash drive. This, he said, is the backup from the neighbor's doorbell camera, time-stamped, night before Emma died. My hands felt numb as he thrust it toward me. Who sent you this? I asked. Tom's eyes were tired. A friend, he said. Someone who didn't trust the police anymore. Someone who knew you'd bury the truth if it smelled like pain. My throat closed. You left because I couldn't finish. Because I wanted answers, he said simply. I thought if I disappeared, they'd stop looking for me and I could dig without anyone watching. Turns out they watched everything. He leaned forward. You need to see this. Tom connected the drive to my phone, the small screen a weak cliff in the dark. The clip flickered to life. A stormy night, snow, a door, a figure bending, hands quick under a mattress. The camera angle was a side glimpse, but the hands, the jacket cuff, I knew them. Grant Larkin. My breath left me. In the next frame, the man looked up toward the camera's lens, not at it, but toward the porch, like someone afraid of someone watching him. Then he left. Tom paused the clip and looked at me. You called Emma that night, remember? He said. You were the last listed contact on her phone. I swallowed hard. Yes, Tom's voice was steady now. The kind of steadiness ID once relied on. We think Grant was trying to frame someone for Emma's death, he said. He planted evidence, staged her apartment so someone would appear guilty. My head spun. You think he killed her? Tom shook his head. I don't know, but he wanted control. He wanted to own secrets. He stood then and moved closer to me until I could feel heat from his body. We brought Mara to mimic Emma's voice to bait him, he said. To make him make a mistake, to make him show up, to see if his fear would push him into the open. And he came, I asked. My voice was tiny. Tom nodded. He checks on the place. He's proud of what he thinks he can hide. Mara's eyes flicked toward the stairwell. He's been here before, she said. He came last week. He thought no one could see him in the dark. A cold sweat trickled down my back. And the anonymous call to the hospital, I blurted. Tom's mouth twisted. That was me, he admitted. I couldn't risk you delaying. I had to get sheriff logs. I had to get someone inside without making it look staged. I wanted to scream at him for leaving me in the dark for 20 years, for returning only when the plan needed me, but instead I felt dizzy. Why use Emma's voice? I whispered. Because he fears her, Tom said. He fears what she knew. He respects her voice. It messes with him, and he likes to see people crumble. My eyes drifted to Mara. She uncapped a little recorder and played a clip, old voicemail from my phone, Emma's laugh and a line, "Dad, I'll be home at 8. I remembered the voicemail, the one I'd replayed to myself 1,000 times. Mara had matched the cadence perfectly. It felt like betrayal and salvation at once. Then from the darkness beyond the doorway, a tiny sound, plastic on wood. We all turned. Tom's hand went to his pocket. A shadow moved across the top of the basement stairs, a familiar shadow, Grant Larkin. He stood at the lip of the stairwell, arms folded, smiling like someone who'd been invited. "You didn't have to drag me out of hiding," he said, voice oily and calm. "You came here yourself. How nostalgic." He took a step down, and the rabbit in his hands glinted. "It seems you miss her, Peter," he said. "You miss playing detective." My hands shook. Tom stepped forward so fast the wood creaked. "You're under arrest," he said. Grant laughed. "You arrest me, you're a ghost." He threw his head back. "You left town, Tom. You're as dead as the rest of them." The hospital corridor flashed in my mind, siren lights, a cold voice over a radio. Grant smiled at me then, too calm, too pleased, and raised the rabbit like a trophy. "Tell me," he said softly, "did she ever tell you about the man in the van?" Before I could answer, another voice came up from behind Grant, soft, amused, and very familiar. "You picked the wrong night to come back." It was Sheriff Dalton's voice, and then the basement filled with light as more shapes moved in the doorway. I realized with a lurch that I was standing at the center of a net. Some hands were pulling it tight, other hands, darker ones, were still holding knots. The rabbit slipped from Grant's fingers and hit the concrete with a hollow, small sound. And over it, Emma's voicemail, played again, said, clear as a bell, "Dad, I'm freezing." The room tilted. I clung to Tom's sleeve, because whichever way this night ended, it would change everything. Sheriff Dalton's voice cut through the dark like a siren. Grant froze on the basement steps, one foot lifted, one hand hovering near the rail. He hadn't expected company. He turned slowly, deliberately, his smirk thinning into a tight line. "Well," he said lightly, "this is awkward." Dalton stepped forward, flashlight raised. "Grant Larkin," he said, "put your hands where I can see them." Grant laughed, the kind of laugh people make when they believe the world belongs to them. "Sheriff," he said, "you have no warrant, you have no cause, you have nothing." Dalton nodded once. "You're right," he said calmly. "We didn't until you broke into a grieving man's home again." He tilted his head toward the basement floor. "We have you on the neighbor's doorbell camera. We have new prints in the snow, and now you're standing in his basement." His voice hardened. "That's cause." Grant's expression flickered. Tom stepped forward from the shadows behind me, hands clenched. "You should have stayed gone," Grant muttered. Tom's voice cracked with rage I'd never heard in him. "You should have stayed away from her." Grant shrugged. "She wanted someone to talk to," he said. "Someone who actually listened." The room dropped to freezing. Tom lunged, but Dalton blocked him with one arm. "Not yet," Dalton warned. "Let him speak." Grant leaned against the stair rail like the whole thing bored him. "You think I hurt her," he said. "That's cute." My stomach twisted. "She was scared of someone," I said. "She told me she felt watched." Grant smiled. "And you thought that someone was me?" He chuckled. "You never considered she had two lives." Something broke inside me at that. "No," I whispered. "Don't you dare paint her like that." He shrugged. "You didn't know your daughter as well as you think." Tom snapped. "You stole her photo. You followed her. You were at her apartment the night she died." Grant didn't deny it. Instead, he rolled his shoulders and exhaled. "Fine," he said. "I'll tell you. I went to see her that night, but not because I hurt her." He looked directly at me. "It's because she came to me first." My world slammed sideways. "What?" I whispered. Grant spoke slowly now, savoring every word. "She came to my door crying, said she'd messed up, said someone was stalking her, said she couldn't go to you because you'd panic." My heart twisted. Emma never wanted to worry me. She always tried to handle storms alone. Grant continued. "She told me someone broke into her apartment. She didn't know who to trust. She begged me to stay with her." I felt the breath leave my chest. "She never mentioned you," I whispered. Grant smirked. "Why would she? You were already falling apart back then. She didn't want to break you more." Tom growled. "Cut the lies." Grant turned vicious instantly. "Your brother here," he said, "was drunk the night she came to me. She said she was scared to go home because you'd been shouting again. Tom went pale. No, he whispered. I never, Dalton stepped in. Grant, enough, whatever your relationship was, you broke into her home. Grant shook his head. No, I went to return the spare key she gave me, that's all. A bitter silence settled. Mara stepped forward, voice low, controlled. You're lying. You went there after she died. You staged things. You moved items under the mattress. Grant tilted his head. That's interesting, he said quietly. Because only someone who was there would know the mattress was disturbed. Mara stiffened. Dalton glared. That's enough, hands up. Grant didn't obey. He stepped down one more stair, eyes locked with mine. Peter, he said gently, you loved her, but you didn't know her. She was keeping something from you. I shook my head. No, she would never. He lifted his sleeve. There, tattooed on his wrist, was a tiny blue star. Emma's symbol, the one from her journal, her private journal. My knees buckled. How did you? Grant tapped the star. She gave me this, he said. I got it 3 months before she died. My heart shattered. The idea of Emma sharing her secret mark with a man I barely knew, it tore something raw inside me. But Tom stepped forward sharply. Stop lying, he shouted. She never let anyone see that journal except Peter. Grant smiled. Yes, she did. She let me see everything. Then he whispered, and that's why she trusted me more than either of you. The sentence cut like a blade. Silence fell. Dead, heavy silence. Then Dalton said firmly, this ends now. He reached for Grant's arm. What happened next was fast, too fast. Grant shoved the rabbit toward my chest, hard enough to knock the wind out of me. At the same moment, he bolted up the stairs. Dalton lunged after him. Mara followed. Tom grabbed my shoulder so I wouldn't fall. Stay down, he shouted, but I couldn't. I pushed past Tom and staggered into the hallway just in time to see the front door slam open. Snow exploded inward. Grant ran into the night. Dalton was right behind him, yelling for backup. Mara slipped on the porch ice and fell. Tom stopped to help her. And I stepped into the snow, rabbit still in my hands, and watched Grant sprint across the yard like a shadow desperate to stay whole. I could hear Dalton shouting, Grant Larkin, stop. He didn't. He reached the curb right as a police cruiser came barreling around the corner. The impact was sickening. The world froze. Sirens bled into the cold air. Dalton ran to the body. Another deputy arrived. Snow began to thicken as if the sky wanted to cover the scene quickly. Tom put a hand on my shoulder. He's alive, he whispered. Barely, but he's alive. I nodded, numb, because the truth was clawing through me. Grant Larkin wasn't just a man who followed Emma. He was a man she trusted once, a man who crossed lines, a man who blurred love with control, a man who broke after she died, but he did not kill her. Tom's voice was soft. He was obsessed, but he wasn't the reason she died. I swallowed hard. Then who was? Tom looked down the long road where the ambulance lights tore open the sky. The truth, he said quietly, is that some storms have no villain and some grief grows claws. My knees shook. Mara walked beside me, gently taking the rabbit from my hands. He never wanted to hurt you, she said. He wanted to hold on to her memory the only way he knew how. Twisted, wrong, but still human. The cold night wrapped around me like a blanket made of someone else's breath. Dalton approached slowly. We'll question him when he wakes, he said. We'll get the full story. But I already knew the truth. The ghost was Emma. The voice was Emma. The messages were Emma. It was a broken man using a broken memory to haunt someone just as broken. I stepped back inside my house. The silence was vast, quiet, real. Emma was gone, but the fear that someone had stolen her voice had taught me something powerful. Grief doesn't disappear. It waits. It watches. Sometimes it even knocks, but it isn't a ghost. It's the love we still carry with no one left to give it to. I closed the door gently. Emma, I whispered into the night, I'm here, I'm listening, and I'll keep you warm. And for the first time in years, I felt the storm inside me finally begin to melt.